Yes.
Here we are.
We are here. Again, I'll say I'm amazed at technology. The moment you go live, it's up on Twitter.
It
It's
is
amazing.
wild to think, like, back in the day, people had to talk via like letters and such. I'm literally in Indianapolis. You're in Philly, and we're just talking via video. Like it's no big
It is. It's amazing.
Like if you
You're
take
right.
a step back for a second, it's no small feat what we're doing.
It's pretty true, buddy. Especially for someone my age and even your age, where it's like
Yeah,
we
I'm
actually
old now.
we remember what it was like to not be able to do these things. Yeah.
Well, we always had phones.
Shout out to Sean. What up, La?
Yeah,
Sean.
we got you. We always
No, we did not. What are you talking about? You might have. Are you kidding me? I didn't get.
I mean, the telephone was invented before you were born.
A telephone. I thought you were talking about like cell phones. All right.
I was gonna say,
Yes,
how old
fair.
are you?
That's fair.
All right.
No, but I mean, like the looking at each other and talk. We couldn't do this when we were younger.
You're right.
You know what I
This
mean?
is new. Correct.
All right. You ready?
I am.
I like that. I like that. Look at Sean and Mo getting together.
Already in.
I love you guys. Hey, hello. This is beautiful stuff.
Oh, wow. That's good.
I'll finish it for you guys. Let's do it. Okay. All right. Here we go. Hey, hello. It is the Go Birds podcast presented by the Bet Park Sportsbook and Casino app. Elliot Short Parks, James Seltzer with you. Elliot, live from Indianapolis. Buddy.
Live from Indianapolis.
How you
doing? Well, out here doing my Big J thing.
Yes.
So the whole thing with the combine, and I even hate myself for saying this because people always do the cool thing is you go out at night and there's blah, blah, blah. Well, I did the thing where I went out last night. I was out until 4 a.m., which is like,
my goodness,
unbelievable. It's probably going to take me a full week to recover.
Real quick, let me just comment on the 4 a.m. I was awake for work 40 minutes before you.
I should have thought of this when I was walking home.
We could have chatted. It would have been
unbelievable. Yeah. The good news is, and this is a good lesson for everybody out there, I did not drink the whole time, and I had light beer. I think IPAs are like the devil's drink, so I'm off those. But it was good. So we'll get into that type of stuff. I have a lot of little, ESP nuggets we can get into.
I like you got to do that.
Little
ESP nuggets.
Little buzz from the combine.
Love it.
What the people are saying. So, but obviously there's a much more important issue at hand.
Yes. The fact that you are a warrior potting after staying up till 4 a.m. Yes, that is the more important issue. Now let's get to the tweet heard around the world as my guy Chauncey Gardner-Johnson just letting it all hang out, Elliot. So why don't you do the honors, considering CJGJ, the big takeaway from this, I think even bigger than what he wrote, clearly an ESP fan, retweeting ESP.
He must shadow follow me because he doesn't.
No big deal to you.
Yeah. But
shadow also follow.
Got to tweet some buzz up to 90,000 views on the video. Well, it's funny. So I wake up this morning, after 4 hours of sleep, and I see text from, I think it's like you and Jack, like sending me the tweet. And at first I'm like, did they Photoshop this? Like, why would Chauncey Gardner-Johnson quote tweet my tweet? So he quote tweets the tweet of Gannon, who spoke yesterday, Arizona Cardinals head coach Jonathan Gannon. Mm-hmm. And I asked him,
enemy. I like to call him enemy of Philadelphia, Jonathan Gannon, but let's go with Arizona Cardinals coach.
The guy that helped them get to the Super Bowl, correct?
Yeah.
But
the guy that lost them the Super Bowl. Yes, got it.
Okay, whatever. We're not going to make.
We're not doing that again.
Yeah. But anyway, so I asked Gannon yesterday, like about there was a lot of questions about the Super Bowl, and he did not seem in a mood to discuss it. Like,
oh, you want to say he answered your question probably because, like, you had his back. So he's like, I'll hook Elliot up. McLean asked a question. He's like, nope, sorry, pal, shutting it down. Nothing else to say. Move on.
I will say,
thanks, John.
I do feel a little bad. It's like his introduction, it's like his introduction to the NFL world as a head coach, and he has to sit there and talk about the game. But it is what it is. When you don't talk after the game, this is what it is. So I asked him about
part of the job.
Yeah, it's part of the job. I asked him about the Super Bowl, and he says, I'm paraphrasing, but what you would expect. I had to do a better job. We weren't good enough, like blah, 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 whatever, right? So Chauncey Gardner-Johnson quote tweets this morning. Have to wonder if he was up late, considering he tweeted it and then said he went back to sleep. But he tweeted essentially, you didn't put us in position to make plays, and then deleted it. So I mean, I don't think you're going to be surprised.
Which we all know with CJGJ, this guy is on Twitter a lot. He tweets a lot. He knew,
100%,
he knew it was a tweet and delete. He knew that people were going to take screenshots. This was very purposeful.
So, I mean, look, I think we all know what my opinion is going to be on this, but like, this is what I don't get. So the tweet itself and then the topic. The tweet itself, obviously you shouldn't tweet it. I appreciate people are honest. I am of the ilk, is that the phrase, of when I hate when athletes say something. Thank you. I hate when athletes say something honest and then we're like, how could you say that? And then when they say nothing, we're like, well, they didn't say any, I appreciate him saying how he feels. I do. But the world is the world that we live in. And he knew it was going to be like this. He's a free agent. I just like, what does he gain from ripping Jonathan Gannon? Like, what does he gain from that? Like, at the end of the day, if Gannon didn't put him in positions to make plays in the Super Bowl, then does Gannon deserve credit for all the interceptions? Like, it can't be both ways. It can't be when the defense is bad, the coach was bad, but when the defense was good, it was just the players. Like, I think it's a mixture of both. And also, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's right. Gannon wasn't good in the Super Bowl. I've been one of Gannon's biggest defenders, right? I don't think I've said once on this pod that the defense was good in the Super Bowl. They were bad in the second half. They absolutely were. So at the end of the day, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's right. He was the defense was not good in the Super Bowl. But I just don't get what he benefits. I don't get how he benefits from ripping Gannon like this. Good.
I agree with you. I think it was really dumb of him to do it, especially, again, as you mentioned, as a free agent. I don't know how it possibly could help his value. Well, but
really funny. I did see a funny tweet. Ike Reese tweeted at me something like, "Why would you do this when there's 32 teams that you could sign with?" Don't think he's going to Arizona.
I think so. It's a good point.
Arizona out of the race for the
but here's the thing. I think that it only adds credence to it, though, right? Like, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson knows he has nothing to gain from doing this, and yet he still felt compelled to do it. He is that annoyed or doesn't like Gannon, or whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to say, to put that out there when it could actually, and I don't think it'll ultimately hurt his bottom line, but theoretically it could hurt.
It definitely could. 100%.
Chauncey Gardner-Johnson makes in the NFL. So he feels really strongly about it. That is my takeaway from this. And I think it just shows, I think, how could you not take this and saying that, look, players on the team didn't love playing for Gannon that much, or at least a certain portion. We heard Fletcher Cox talk about it when Gannon was here and, throw some things out there and all that type of stuff. But I don't know how you could look at this as any other way than at least certain players on the team were not fans of playing for Jonathan Gannon. I think it's, and again, the fact that he had this much to lose from doing it monetarily, I think the fact that he did it really says something about how that locker room felt about Gannon personally.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you talk about the Fletcher Cox stuff last year, talking about Gannon, you talk about this, yes, I would agree that this is probably a hint or a look into somehow the players feel about Gannon. Now, I do think sometimes, and I think this was the case with Carson Wentz and with Chip Kelly, not you, but we'll do a thing where we do the locker room doesn't like him. The reality is there's probably plenty of players in the locker room that
there's
Carson
shades
Wentz.
Of gray.
Yeah,
sure.
So Chauncey did this, and I would guess that they're not friends because me and you are friends. I would never rip you, but I definitely wouldn't do it on Twitter.
If you were gonna rip me, you'd call me up and be like, "Bro, what the hell?"
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm not confrontational, so I'd probably just.
No, you're not. You're not. I'm way more confrontational.
Yeah,
I would call you and be like, "Elliot, what the hell?"
Exactly. Yeah. I wouldn't get a tweet being like, Elliot didn't put me in a position to have a good pod.
No, that would not happen, buddy.
But I think it's an indication that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is not a Gannon fan. But I also think this goes back to why I said that I wouldn't hire him as a head coach. I've never got the feeling that the players loved Gannon. I think that, he helped a lot of them have a career year. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is going to get paid a lot of money because of the year he had. And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's a great player. Hassan Reddick is a great player. The guys that had great years are great players. But ultimately, Gannon, we can't pick and choose when Gannon gets credit and when he doesn't. Gannon helped these guys have career years in his defense. Doesn't mean Gannon was a good coordinator. It doesn't mean Gannon was a great coordinator. It doesn't mean that he wasn't his fault they lost the Super Bowl. But the reality is, if you're Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, you just, in Gannon's defense, had a career year that's going to make you a lot of money. He traded for you. He played you at the position.
Well,
you
he didn't trade for him. I mean,
whatever,
how he
fine.
did.
His team, like whatever. The Eagles traded for you. The Eagles played you in the position you wanted to play. You're gonna make a lot of money.
But it seems like Chauncey thinks he could have done better with a different coordinator. Like, what does that say? But what does that say?
The defense was good. I'll take that back. The defense
was super talented. It was
as
talented a defense as we've had here since the 90s.
They were bad in the Super Bowl. Everyone thought they were going to be bad in the Super Bowl. I don't think any people realistically deep down thought they were going to shut down Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And so it's like, you didn't put us in a position to make plays. Like, yeah, man, he got out coached by Andy Reid. We know this. This is not breaking news to anybody. We watched the game. He was out coached by Andy Reid. My only argument has ever been there's not a ton of shame in that. Like, it's disappointing. I agree.
He was out coached and outplayed by every good quarterback he ever faced in an Eagles
We're talking about the Super Bowl.
But again, we're not. Like, this is not just the Super Bowl. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson does not put that tweet out there if it's just about the Super Bowl. It's about Jonathan Gannon. It's about how he feels about Jonathan Gannon. Like, if he loved JG and had a great year with him and then just messed up in the Super Bowl, he doesn't do that. He doesn't put that out there. He put it out there because he doesn't think Jonathan Gannon's as good at his job as everyone else does, or at least the NFL does. Like, that he was making a point saying this guy's not that good. This guy is not good. He said, you did not do your job, is what he said publicly to the freaking world. Like, you can't shirk that off. Like,
I'm not shirking it off. I agree. He's saying Gannon did a bad job. My only counter I'm saying is we all saw he did a bad job in that game. So,
but I think he did a bad job. I think Gannon, and I've said this the whole time, is not that good a defensive coordinator. He had the best, most talented defense we've had here in 30 years or whatever, since the Reggie days, practically, just in terms of pure talent on the defensive side of the football. And they got a lot of sacks. The upfront guys were awesome and got to the quarterback and stuff. And Gannon, I don't think Gannon's the worst defensive coordinator ever, but I don't think he makes teams better. I think if you give him a lot of talent, he'll do a fine job. He'll do a good job. But if you don't have talent, he's going to stink. And I just think he's not that good a coach. That's where I'm at with Jonathan Gannon. I think he's a fraud as again, in terms of like the whole Sirianni thing, connecting with players. I think he's got no chance to be Nick Sirianni with that type of stuff. Pew, 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 pew,
I agree with you on
and again,
all
the
this.
players who he was coaching are already talking out on him after the defense had a career season. He's still getting guys. He's gone. This is such a statement and a showing to me that I feel validated with my thoughts on Gannon, because I think the locker room thought Gannon was overrated.
What's so funny is
parts of the locker.
It's so funny how we've debated Gannon on this pod for 2 years now, pretty much, a year and a half, whatever. And how you just described Gannon, I agree with most of that. My point was never that Gannon is some phenomenal defensive mind. My point was basically while he was a coordinator this year, they had a great defense and they struggled against great quarterbacks because defenses struggle against great quarterbacks. We'll talk about Sean Desai, I'm sure, coming up.
Yep.
I got news for you. Sean Desai is probably going to run pretty much the same defense Gannon does. It is what it is, right?
But will he adjust? Will he be able to adapt? Will he change what he's doing against better quarterbacks? He's going to, I'll bet. Come on, man.
Gannon, dude, they went through a stretch of the year where they had the best second half defense in the NFL. Now again, you're going to say they didn't play anybody. I get it,
and they didn't. They had great players, and they played no quarterbacks.
And they had a great defense. They had great players, and they had a great defense. So,
until they played a great quarterback.
Whatever. We don't have to make this a Gannon debate, but back to the tweet, right? I do agree with you that this is probably a hint into how players feel about Gannon. No question about it. He tweets that out. It's not a thought he had when he woke up right away. It's probably something the players have talked about over the last few weeks. It's probably something they talked about leading up to the game. I agree with you on all that, right? So it is a bad look for him to tweet it. But you are right that I also think this is an indication of how the players, or at least, a subsection of the players, whatever, felt about Gannon. And it's why I wouldn't have hired him as a head coach. It's why I don't think he'll be successful in Arizona. All that being said, I do think he was overly criticized here. I think there's good and bad of Gannon, just like every coach. I agree that the tweet is a bad look for him, but also a good look into probably how the locker room feels about him.
All right, let's get to this eye, and then I want to get into buzz from the combine. You always say the combine isn't about the draft; it's about free agency, and I want to hear what you're hearing out there and stuff like that.
One more question about Chauncey. Would this impact you wanting him back on the team? Like, honestly,
no.
not the whole like sign him. Like,
no, it wouldn't. I get it, but look, I just think, I mean, look, this is the way football is. You're always going to have guys on teams who are going to be a little bit loose. I mean, we already have guys, right? AJ Brown makes mistakes on Twitter. Darius Slay makes mistakes on Twitter. Like, Sean's a good football player. I love his energy on the field. I love what he brings from that perspective. So, no, this isn't. I get it. I could see how a team would be like, do we want that type of thing? But it's it's not like he's saying like horrible things. He's just going at his old defensive coordinator. Right? It's competitive. Like, I don't hate it.
I do think, as much as I think the culture with this team was really good, it is interesting how they lost the Dallas game. Darius Slay's calling out Josiah Scott. They lose the Super Bowl. AJ Brown's calling out the punter. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's tweeting about the coordinator. Like, this team, when they've lost this year, was not – now, they were way better than the Niners were, like all those things, right? Like, the majority of the locker room stood up and was like very professional about it. And, Slay has been very professional too. But it is, after two like real losses this year. And then also the Saints one, I guess. I don't remember anything after that. But there were like some moments this season where the locker room wasn't exactly not pointing fingers.
Well, it's going to be interesting. Look, because as I think they're going to be good next year. We'll obviously get to that down the road once all these moves are made. And I think Jalen's going to take a leap. I already told you. I bet on him to win MVP on the Parks app. Everyone check that out. But I mean, I don't think they're going to be 14-3 next year. I think there'll be more downs than there were this year. So it'll be interesting. It's something to monitor, because we have given Sirianni a lot of credit for the culture and the locker room and all that. So they're winning. Winning breeds good culture too. So it's an interesting one. All right. I want to get to Desai quickly. I have my thoughts on him. I want to start with your thoughts as the preeminent defensive coordinator speaker on, you. Yes, this is who knows. You might not know it, but you could be saying Sean Desai's name more than anyone else for the next 3 years of your life.
A year from now, we'll be this will be a year. You'll be going. He always gets beat by great quarterbacks, and I'll go. Well, that's what defenses do. So we're essentially just switching the name out in the thing. No, I mean,
thoughts on Desai?
Yeah. So my thought on it is this. I think it was a difficult job to hire for because they're a team, to your point, they're not going to go 14-3 next year, we don't think. But they are supposed to win the Super Bowl. Like, that's the expectation for next year, or at least be very, very good. So you're trying to hire somebody that has experience in the way that they have to win right away. Like, there's no learning on the job. But also, I think when you hire any position outside of expectations, you want somebody like, I'm not big on retreads, right? Like, I want someone that's young, that has like new ideas, like those type of things. So I think that Sean Desai is probably the best mixture of those two. I don't think I wouldn't have hired Mike Zimmer, but he's not Mike Zimmer in the way that he's like a seasoned vet that's going to come in here right away, right? But he's also not somebody that's like, a linebackers coach, like Nick Rallis at the Cardinals hired. Like, Nick Rallis is super young, has never done the job.
He's like a decade younger too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas Sean Desai has done the job. He did it in Chicago. He did essentially it in Seattle. I know he wasn't the coordinator, but he was an assistant head coach on the defensive side of the ball. So he was very involved in that defense. So I haven't watched a lot of Bears and Seahawks games to like break down the defense yet. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm like know what his scheme is. But a couple things. One, if you look at the Seattle and Chicago defenses, like they were interesting because they gave up a lot of points. But there were things you could look at, like the secondary was good. Like, there were aspects of the defense that I think was good. And they didn't have a ton of talent. Like, now, this Eagles defense might not have a ton of talent next year.
That was something I was going to say when you were talking about, like, how attractive a job it is to add in the fact that it's going from this unbelievably talented defense looking at, you're going to take losses and you're going to have to develop young guys and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, they might, and we'll get into this with free agency. They might be playing young guys, right? But anyway.
I mean, like play and develop. That's what I meant. Yeah, like exactly. Guys you're gonna have to play some young guys. Yeah.
So my guess is, in terms of his scheme, just listening to Nick talk yesterday, I do not think that he's gonna come in here and be the scheme that people want. Like, I don't think he's gonna come in, and I don't think
Nick made it very clear. Nick said part of the reason they hired him was because he does a lot of the things we're doing already.
And I'll say this though, like, I didn't like that answer from Nick, and I also didn't like it on the offensive side of the ball, where you're just like, on the offensive side of the ball, if I remember correctly, he said something.
He's like, this is great, we're good.
Well, he's also like, we're going to do things exactly the same way.
I was like, what?
all right, bro, like they better have a counterpunch ready. And I think they do. But if they think they're just going to roll out next year and do the same stuff and get the same results.
So just to give him a little pay, he might be talking about from an operational perspective, like the way we coach things, the way we teach technique, the way, like, you could be talking about that kind of stuff and not necessarily like, and obviously, look, Jalen's going to be the quarterback, so the scheme is going to be somewhat similar. You're not going to completely change, but I'm with you. Like, I hope he means that. Not literally.
Yeah, and obviously, like,
I don't think
he's standing up at the podium and being like, "Hey guys, we're all gonna run the same plays next." Like, so
get ready for it, NFL. Same offense coming at you.
Right, but that is one of my concerns to tie in Brian Johnson, who I think is a great hire. But like, I don't know, it would be nice to have some outside eyes on the offense from somebody. Like, if you look at Doug in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, did he hire a single offensive coach outside the building until Scangarello, and that was like a disaster. Like it was Grow, it was like, so
they brought in Marty as like a assistant type guy, but yeah, you're right.
And even he has like history with Doug. But so to keep on Sean Desai, I think he's going to come in here. I think he's going to do a lot of the same things. I think there will certainly be some differences, but at the end of the day, I think that the defense is probably going to be very similar. I think the defense is going to probably be really good against bad quarterbacks because they're going to have, at the end of the day, still a decent amount of talent. They're going to have Hassan Reddick. They're going to, right? But I think that he's probably going to struggle against great quarterbacks. So I think it's a good hire in the way that he's young. He seems to be well liked. If you read things about him in Chicago and Seattle, I'm excited to talk to him and get like a vibe perspective of him. Because again, like, I never loved Gannon's vibe, so maybe Sean Desai is better in that way. But ultimately, when I think about the hire, I think it's the best possible hire they probably could have made, considering the tough circumstances they were in with it.
I really like the hire. I like it quite a bit after doing research on Desai and reading about him. He has a lot of the traits that when we came around on Nick, after we got through the first press conference and really kind of learned about him and all that, we're like, oh, this guy's a teacher. This guy is someone who uses education as a way to teach football, as a way to make players understand. I mean, Desai's the same thing. I mean, this guy has a doctorate in education. This guy went to Columbia. He went to Columbia to get his master's degree. He got a doctorate at Temple. He was an adjunct professor at Temple while he was also coaching football. Like, this guy's really smart, really, really smart. He's got multiple advanced degrees. He cares about education. And then he worked his way up on a football field. He was an adjunct professor and like helping on Al Golden's staff at Temple. And from there, his way. Temple made, baby. You're damn right. Yeah. And he worked his way up the ranks. And it seems like he's clearly very bright. He's someone who cares about education, cares about teaching players, all that type of stuff. So look, I don't know what he's like personality wise and all that. And I do think that matters. I'm big on that type of stuff. And it's part of the reason that I think Sirianni is such a great coach. So I don't know enough about Desai, but in terms of everything I've read, and look, I'm with you. Like, he is a Fangio guy, but it seems like his scheme is a little different from Gannon. It's a lot of the same tenets and stuff, but he is a little bit more aggressive with press coverage, with things like that. A lot of the things that drove us crazy on a game-to-game basis with Gannon when we were complaining about Gannon. And look, it's ultimately going to come down to how good he is at adjustments, how good he is at changing his game plan when he's facing Patrick Mahomes and not just doing what that type of stuff when he's so we don't know enough about it, but in terms of like what we can know and what we can read, I'm really impressed with him. I think he's an impressive hire. And and not to mention the first Indian American coordinator in the history of the sport, which is awesome. Like, I don't know. Again, I don't think we know enough about him as a person and the way he interrelate. Because again, Gannon, I'm with you. Like, part of the reason I didn't like Gannon from the jump was he just came off as a fraud to me. Came off as inauthentic. Like, the whole thing we loved about Nick, where we're like, this guy's going to be Nick Sirianni in any situation, anywhere, and he doesn't care. He doesn't care if people call him a boob or call him a goof or think he's whatever. And I never got that from Gannon. And not that I was around him a ton. I don't know him well or anything, but it always felt like he was uptight. It always felt like he was kind of like, it wasn't natural. I mean, dude,
I've been saying this about, I am with you on this. I've always said this after his press conferences. So
and that matters to me.
So an interesting dynamic to this is it seemed like the players wanted Denard Wilson. If I'm not mistaken, I know Slay tweeted about it. Didn't Chauncey tweet about it too?
I didn't see it. I'm not sure, but
all right, maybe not. But I do know there was vocal support for him to get the job. Nick talked about Denard Wilson yesterday. He made it sound like he might not even be back. Right?
That was my takeaway too. Yeah.
So for what it's worth, like, the players really wanted Denard Wilson. Chauncey's already been clear. He's willing to be vocal about stuff he doesn't like. Like, I just do wonder. I think Sean Desai is going to have to come in and win over this locker room, like any head coach. I'm sorry, any coordinator does, like, of course. But I'll just be curious to see the dynamics with Denard Wilson, if he does leave, if he does stay. If I'm not mistaken, Nick even used the word like dynamic up there. So I wonder how how Denard will feel about not getting the job. But no, look, I think everything you said, I'm more in on the hire than I was before you said. Like, I already liked the hire, but I didn't know the thing about his education. I agree. That's something I really like about Nick. So I think it was the best hire they could have made. Like, if you would have laid them all out.
Given the circumstances, I totally agree. Especially because they had to get a late start. Other teams were able to interview. Other teams were able to hire before the Eagles were even able to. They didn't even know Gannon was leaving until after the Super Bowl.
Well, and it's also a lateral move. Like, you don't really see guys make lateral moves, right? So they got somebody from that respect. Also, Pete Carroll seemed a little salty that they took him.
I thought that was really interesting. And Drew in Westchester, our buddy Drew Bayless, who I saw in the chat before, made this point on the show that Carroll's had a lot of success with developing coordinators, defensive guys, and stuff like that. So that is something like Pete Carroll, whatever you want to say about him, one of the great defensive minds of this generation, or of the last generation, and learning from him is not a bad thing.
Yeah, well, good point in the chat. Speaking of the chat, Drew brings up that Nick won players over after a bunch of them wanted Deuce. So
yeah, it's another good point.
A similar situation. But
ultimately, look, on a basic level, I don't want them hiring the coach because the players want him. I'm sorry.
I agree with that.
I appreciate it's important that the players are into the coach, but ultimately that can't be the reason you hire your defensive coordinator.
Right. It's like why Gannon's still a good coordinator, even if the players didn't like him. Right. At the end of the day, that's not like.
There you go, buddy. There you go.
I do think, like, and we can maybe talk about Brian Johnson. I don't know how much there is to say about him, but I do think what I like about Sean Desai as well, as opposed to promoting Denard Wilson, is the fresh eyes coming in, right? Like, he might want to run similar schemes. And I think, look, Nick's the head coach. So I think Sean Desai will be the head coach of the defense, but ultimately Nick decides like the core of their defense in terms of like what they value, what they don't want to give up, those things. So I think there will be similarities, but it is a good thing to have a fresh set of eyes come in. Like, at the end of the day, like, I've been pretty vocal about the fact that I think being really good next year is going to be hard if it's the same exact guys, like all those things. So I do think a fresh set of eyes, a fresh kind of like breath of fresh air will be good for the defense.
All right, let's get to Brian Johnson and the Combine Buzz in 1 second. Download the BetParx Sportsbook Casino. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, seriously, we've had so much fun with this app. Obviously, if you've been in the chat, you've heard us talk about it all. Playoff run. You can bet on anything and everything. Basketball betting is back. Thank goodness. Finally getting into it. I'm finally starting to get a roll. Now, I might have bet on the Sixers on Saturday night, and I might have lost, and that Embiid shot went in, and I was pretty sad about it. Let me tell you, as a Sixers fan and as a gambler, it wasn't great.
On that game, I also had the Sixers winning. Didn't win that one, but also I had Embiid and Harden points, and had it gone to overtime, like, I would have hit. Yeah.
Oh,
so it was, dude, I was watching that shot live. Like, I was.
So was I.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Like, the fact that went in, it would look like a.
Well, because you don't when he threw, and when he threw it, we didn't, like, in the moment. You don't see how clearly
don't, like, track the ball too, like,
and you don't track the shot clock thing as quickly. Like, I thought he got it off. I'm like, oh my god, we're going to overtime. It's amazing. And then it's like, no, I didn't make it. It's like, oh god.
Well, I thought it was so funny how he didn't even act like he was like,
he knew. He knew. But
Sean,
that's the point. And think about when you have money on these things. If you had money the other way, you'd been ecstatic. That's what's so fun about gambling on sports.
So Sean brings up a good point. He lives in Maryland. He says he can't use a Parks app, which is unfortunate. But you know what, Sean? You can still download the app because you might be in PA at one point.
Yeah, that's right. And I appreciate that in his mind, he's an active Parks.
Exactly,
user.
Yes.
Shout out to Sean. And shout out to everyone who's downloaded the app and had fun with us. And again, it's not just basketball. Obviously, you can bet on baseball right around the corner. Futures, Elliot and I probably in a couple weeks, we'll do our classic baseball over-unders pod. Cannot wait. I'm already researching, getting ready. It really is. I keep it every year. I have the sheet of paper. I'll tell you, I did last year.
All right, I'm excited to hear that.
I don't remember, but I'll go through and I'll do that. Right. But you can only have fun with us with this stuff. And the Parks Picks Pod coming tomorrow, talking about all this stuff. Like, you can only do that if you have a little fun with us on the app. So download the app in the App Store, Google Play Store, or at betparks.com. Use our promo code GoBirds. That's GOBIRDS. First bet up to $750 in site credit. If you don't win, it is an amazing deal. Do it with us. Have some fun with the Bet Park Sportsbook and Casino app. You must be 21 and present in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, before we get to the buzz from the combine, quick thoughts on Brian Johnson. We kind of knew this was coming and talked about it, so we don't need to dive deep, but just quick thoughts on the Johnson hire.
Well, I also think we should point out, you brought up how Sean Desai is the first, coordinator.
India, he's the first Indian American coordinator in the history of the NFL.
But also now the Eagles have 3 coordinators who are all minorities. I think this is the first time in a really long time, which isn't great, but the first time in a long time that they've hired minority candidates for both offense and defensive coordinators.
Oh, yeah. So they're the only team in the NFL, I believe, with it.
Yeah. So Brian Johnson as a coach and as a coordinator, I think there's a really good chance, like in a year or two, he's a head coach somewhere else. I think he has those qualities. Like you talk about what Gannon doesn't have quality wise. I think Brian Johnson has that in spades, like being around him, watching videos of him giving speeches, like the job. Again, we often credit Jalen, rightfully so, because Jalen does a lot of work.
Great point, Elliot. We never give Brian Johnson any credit. We'll give Sirianni credit. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, the improvement that Jalen has made has arguably been one of the best improvements we've ever seen an NFL player make, from being a guy that people didn't even think could play quarterback.
I think it's the biggest. I think it's the biggest. I'm serious. I think it's the biggest leap I've ever seen a player take in my life.
That's what I'm saying. Right. So ultimately, again, Jalen gets the credit because he does the work, but Brian Johnson's been with him every step of the way, right? Like the dude's known him since he was a kid. So if you want to talk about just somebody that we know can make the best out of players, Brian Johnson has that 100%. We know he's a great coach. He's tight with Jalen. He's called plays before, not in the NFL, but he's called plays before. He's going to call play with the Eagles. My only hesitation would just be it's a not fresh set of eyes. But ultimately, again, there's no perfect coach. And this guy is about as perfect of a coach as you could have hired. And I will say this, that had he not been a coordinator here, he would have been a coordinator elsewhere. So he was going to get a job. It's not like the Eagles just promoted him to promote him. If they don't promote him, he's gone. He's probably with the Jets or something like that, right? So ultimately, I think it was a great hire. I do think on offense, while they're going to have a counterpunch and they're going to have to change their offense in some ways, and I'm sure there'll be some new wrinkles with him as coordinator. Bottom line, his offense was awesome last year, and they're returning a ton, basically all their starters, right? We'll get into
other than like maybe Isaac Samalo.
Yeah, and look, we'll talk about
Kelsey. We'll see what got.
But ultimately, they're going to have the same receiver, same quarterback, a lot of. So I think that while you're going to have wrinkles, the team's going to be as good as the offense is. And with Brian Johnson, I think there can be a lot of confidence that the offense can be just as good, if not better, than they were last year.
Yeah, look, again, it's one of those things where, as you pointed out, you're around the team, so you have a better feel, but we're not. And the quarterback's coach doesn't really talk much, so you don't really get a feel for him. Exactly. So you don't get a feel for him. You don't get a feel for whatever. But all we can do is look at the resume, and B, what people say about him and how wanted he is across the NFL, like you pointed out. Even when he was hired, forgetting the Jalen connection, everyone was like, wow, it's a home run hire. Like, this guy's a superstar. He's going to be a star. You heard so much of that stuff. So it seemed like a total no-brainer for him. And again, the connection to Jalen, I'm sure that matters. I'm sure it matters. I'm sure, to your point, it helped him take the leap. He's known Jalen since he was 2 years old too.
Well, and also last year, one thing we talked a lot about with Jalen, and you brought it up a ton, was just the continuity in the coaching staff and how that was going to help him. Like, you're losing Steichen, obviously he's gone, but having Brian Johnson will at least help with that continuity of keeping Jalen with the same coaches, the same system around him. For now, the second year in a row, or it's like third off season or whatever. So I think that's a benefit as well.
All right, let's get to the combine, the buzz. What have you heard? Elliott Shore-Parks, you've been out there, as you said before, hanging out till 4 a.m, gallivanting, big J-ing, doing the whole thing. The big J scene out in the combine.
Just what you think of when you think of ESP. You think of
Talk
Big
to
J.
me, buddy.
So,
Talk to me.
So, all right, here's what I'll do. I'll tell you kind of like everything I heard, and then you can help me piece it together. Because with this type of stuff, there's definitely like conflicting, I think, sometimes information, right? So I think Javon Hargrave is going to get paid, is one thing I'm getting out here. Like, he's a pass rushing defensive tackle. The sense I get from, again, being out and like, is that teams are in on him. I think he's going to get absolutely paid. So I think he's someone that could be out of the Eagles' price range potentially. I do think there's a better chance than we might realize that James Bradberry is going to be back.
Wow.
I think the money, we'll see what he ends up getting, but I don't know if he's going to get like $17 million a year. Like, I could be wrong about this, but I get the sense that there's mutual
teams view him as like a 2 more than a 1. Is that kind of the thing? Because you've been saying that.
I think that I think the Eagles would like him back, and I think he would like to be back. So I think that there is something to be done there potentially. Now, again, like this is where I'm having trouble piecing it all together. I also think the Eagles are going to have trouble bringing these guys back because of the money of it. Now, they can structure it in ways that can happen, but I think they're preparing as if these guys are gone. Like, I think that we talked about it. Like, I think they're going to have to find new starters. I think they're going to have to play young players, but ultimately, if you look at the big free agents, right? Hargrave, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, James Bradberry, Isaac Seumalo, we'll see what his money is. And then Miles, TJ, like Epps, those guys aren't going to get huge money. But at the end of the day, of those like 4 main guys that are going to get a lot of money, I think one of them is going to be back. I just don't know. I can't figure out from piecing it all together which one it's going to be.
So wait, who's the 4th? The 3 obvious big money guys are Hargrave, Bradberry, and CJ GJ. You think Seumalo gets paid?
I think he's going to get paid. Yeah.
Well, then he won't be back. I mean, they're not going to pay Seumalo. They're just not.
You don't think so?
No, not when you have Juergens. You just play. I mean, it depends on if Kelsey's coming back. That you're right. We don't know about Kelsey.
Kelsey's coming back.
So do I, and that's kind of where I've been at. So if Kelsey's coming out, I think they play Juergens at guard. Like, that's a clear cheap option. You're not going to draft the guy in the 2nd round last year and not have him play for 2 years to start his career. My guess is Juergens is a starting guard next year.
Maybe, but I think if Kelsey's back, I think he'll look, I'm sure he likes Cam Juergens, but ultimately there is nobody.
If he wants it, I mean, but if they're going to give Seumalo a huge contract at guard.
When do they, we'll see what huge, but at the end of the day, they
paid a guard once. Brandon Brooks got paid. I don't think they've ever really paid a guard a bunch of money.
Though. I mean,
it was, but like, I don't know.
They value the offensive side of the ball. They value the offensive line.
They do.
I don't know if Cam Juergens can play guard. He might just be the center. So I think that there's a chance that of those 4 guys, one's going to be back. I'll tell you this, they're not franchising they're not franchising Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So I think it's going to just come down to if they can pay him. And I just don't get the sense that he's the priority on this. Like, I think of those 4 guys, I think they would like to have Hargrave back the most. He might just end up getting too much money. But I think of those 4 guys, one will be back. What I haven't pieced together yet is which one it's going to be.
So I think it's the 3. I think those 3 defensive players will get significantly more money than Seumalo. Seumalo will probably get paid. He's been a solid offensive lineman for a while.
Solid for what it's worth.
I would be floored. They have Driscoll who can play guard. Like, they got dudes who can play guard. I would be absolutely floored if they give Seumalo like Brandon Brooks money or something, even in that hemisphere. Like, I would be shocked, like absolutely stone cold shocked, especially at the expense of signing one of those defensive guys. Like, I'd be floored.
The other thing I will put out into the ecosystem that people should think about, I think that Devontae next year is up for a contract, and that is something that is like, I think they're probably going to pay Devontae. And so
they should. Good.
And so paying Devontae next year, though, does impact what you can do this year, right? Because especially if one of the things, how we want them to structure these deals is, let's say they sign Hargrave and Bradberry, right? And they make their caps really small this year, but they make them bigger next year. Like, that impacts Devontae. And I know the money can always be moved, but just one thing to consider when we're talking about, pay all these guys is, if you pay all, it's going to be tough to pay AJ and Devontae. And I think they'll do it because it's a smart thing to do. But having a ton of money invested, I mean, think about this. They'll have AJ, one of the highest paid receivers in the league, Goddard, one of the highest paid tight ends, Hurts, one of the highest paid quarterbacks, and Devontae is not going to sign a deal where he's like the 18th highest paid receiver. He might not be top 5, but he's not going to be outside the top 10. So I think there's a lot of money on that offense, and there's going to be a lot more money invested in it too. So I think they have their eye on the future smartly when it comes to Devontae, which is why I think they are prepared to let defensive guys leave. I just think they have one big move in them. One big move, whether it's Bradberry, Hargrave, I guess maybe Chauncey, but I just he would be number 3 for me.
So you think they're going to really strike, like, because we've talked about Howie's ability to maneuver and this and that. You think they're just not going to keep a lot of guys? You think it's really going to be
I do not think they're going to keep a lot of guys. I feel very confident about that.
So then what do they do? I mean, are they going to sign guys from other teams? Are they going to, because they have to fill holes on defense. And I know they got draft picks, but like, are we talking about like 10 and 30 both have to start this year? Like, I mean, maybe 10 does, but like, I mean,
well, 30 should start too. Whoever you take in the first round should be. I mean, I know 30 is
not necessarily. I mean, they should play, but it doesn't. I mean, rotation wise, if they take a defensive lineman, they probably wouldn't be a starter.
No,
there,
but
you know what I mean.
Well, I don't know. I think if they take a defensive tackle at 30, that player could.
It could be, but again, it's all about position and all that.
Well,
but
so like, let's look at the holes, right? So, and what's interesting is Derek Gunn, I guess, said something on his pod about how maybe they could trade Slay. I would be surprised by that, but if they do that, that opens a ton of money. But so Slay on one side, the corner on the other side. I think it's either Bradbury or I think it's maybe. So I think they will sign a veteran, but if you look at 10, like that is a good cornerback spot. I'm just worried about drafting a guy and starting him day one. Again, they have to do it. You have to evaluate it correctly. But it is tough to do. Safeties, I think Epps probably back because he's not going to get a ton of money. Although I do think he's an Arizona possibility. Gannon really likes him. He knows the defense. So I think Epps is a possibility there. So maybe the Cardinals overpay for him. And then if you look at linebacker, I mean, Nakobe is going to have to step in and take a jump.
He's going to be awesome.
So I think what next year will be.
I'm calling it now. Nakobe's going to be awesome.
I think what next year is going to be is the offense is going to have to be great. And the defense, because of a lot of turnover, is probably going to take some time. Because again, think about all the guys that are just free agents among the starters, right? Bradbury, CJ Epps, both linebackers. Brandon Graham, not a starter, but basically a starter. Fletcher Cox, like Javon Hargrave. Like you're talking about 7 of the 11 guys, or 12, however you want to name it, that play significant snaps that are free to leave. And I think they're going to lose like 5 of them. So
then you got to fill holes. It can't just be rookie. They're going to have to sign other guys. Like they're not.
I agree. Well, the defense is not going to be as talented as it was last. Like they're just not.
Thank God they got Gannon out of here and they got a real coordinator in here to actually make players better. To quote CJGJ, put players in position to make plays. It'd be nice.
Well, they made a lot of plays this year. So, but to your point, Nakobe's going to it could be more talented if Nakobe steps up and is great. If Jordan Davis takes some big step forwards, if Milton Williams is in more snaps better, it's just going to be a lot more unknown. I just get the sense they are ready for a turnover on defense in terms of talent, not because they want it, but just because of how things are playing out. And
Oh, you're muted. I lost you. Somehow you muted yourself, Elliot. Elliot, you muted yourself. You're muted. You have to, no, on here, you are muted. There you go, buddy. We couldn't hear you. I still can't hear you, though. Uh-oh. I can't hear you. There we go. Oh, and you just went on and off. I heard you for a half sec. Hit it. There you go.
Now?
Yes!
The thrills of live podcasting.
We're back.
Yeah. So I think there's going to be a lot of turnover on defense. I think they're going to use draft picks on defense. Like Bijan Robinson, I'm sure we'll do time talking about him. Someone brought this up in the chat, and I do think it's worth bringing up. Did you see the Jalen Carter news?
So I did. I actually saw it in the chat. I was going to bring it up. I did. So I know about that accident. He was involved in that, or they're saying he was. So break it down. What happened?
The police report, or there was a statement put out by I believe it was the Athens police, and I don't know all the details on this, but if you remember, a member of the team and a staff member of the team passed away in a car accident.
Right? Yep.
So I think what has come out is that Jalen Carter and this guy, the player, were racing. And as a result of racing, this happened.
Oh my God.
I guess Jalen Carter, I think they were saying that cars will go over 100 miles an hour. I believe the player had a high alcohol level. I don't believe Jalen Carter was probably given a test.
Well, yeah, he wasn't. Yeah, they didn't know it. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. But so yeah, I mean, I believe there's a warrant out for his arrest. And
wow.
I think they're both misdemeanors. They're both misdemeanors. And someone brought this up in the chat. Now, this is a real thing that happened, but you are going to see prior to the draft, people are going to try to get Jalen Carter to drop, right? So this is going to be up to the Eagles. It's going to be up to their head of security, Dom, like who's great at his job. They're going to have to look into it. They're going to have to be sure about the guy, but the player is unbelievable. And if
he might be the best player in the draft,
right? If he falls to he could go 1, but let's say
he's probably the most. Him or whichever quarterback you like the most, Stroud or whatever.
And also, we say this a lot about Jordan Davis, how he was the most athletic guy on that team. There's an argument Jalen Carter has been the best player on that defense the last 2 years, right? Even when Nakobe and Jordan Davis were there. And I can't remember the guy that got
Trayvon Walker.
Trayvon Walker, yeah. So, at the end of the day, we'll see if he falls close enough where the Eagles could move up. But this is a situation where now the tough thing is if it's a real deal that does make him fall, then the Eagles also have to decide,
right?
Do you want to take him? So, yeah, but it's a dynamic.
Fascinating.
Sure.
Yeah.
The Eagles are going to have to do their homework. I think the Eagles have mostly done a good job on these things. So I think if they do their homework and they're confident with it, and he falls and other teams aren't, absolutely, but they'll have to decide on that. But to that point, I think the defense on the defensive side of the ball is very much going to be dictated by new players. A lot of new starters, a lot of young guys. To your point, Steven Nelson is not who they'll sign, but those type of veterans are probably going to be signed that aren't going to cost a lot of money. They've done, I think, a somewhat poor job. If you think about Steven Nelson, Anthony Harris, they've not done a great job identifying veteran safety members that can come in and play right away. So that's going to be a challenge for them. But yeah, I think on defense, you're looking at a big turnover.
All right. Last thing that I have before, if you have anything else that you heard and stuff, but what have you heard on the Hurts contract? And what did you make of Howie Roseman's quote yesterday that was very interesting, basically saying Jalen knows that you need a good team around him. He's a smart guy. It's going to be a great contract, but he understands, is it a real, he's got an agent who's trying to make money. He's got other quarterbacks. He's got to set markets for, there's all these factors, but the person, Jalen, obviously, when he was asked about at the end of the season, what about your contract? He's like, I just want to win. I want to talk about it. Is there a chance Jalen actually takes a team-friendly deal with his first ever contract? Is that something that we should legitimately be hopeful for?
Yeah, 100%. I think it is going to be a team-friendly deal. But also, I think sometimes we think of team-friendly deals as less money. I think the way it'll be...
It's the way the contract is situated, right? Gives Howie
maneuverability. The way Jalen will work with them to make it team-friendly is how it's structured, right?
Yep.
Players can say something, I want big base salaries every year because that's how I want my money. And that's a sticking point. Maybe Jalen saying, no, I'll take a big check up front. We can renegotiate this a bunch of times. I think what Howie was saying, and it's what I said last time when we talked about this on the pod, I think between Jalen, Howie, and his agent, you're right. There's outside pressure here, the union, all these things. But I think between those three, they will work to get this done in a way where Jalen gets a ton of money. And Howie said that. Howie's not hiding from it.
He said it's going to get a tremendous contract, is what he said.
Right. So I think he's going to get a ton of money. And I think they're going to structure this in a way. Again, we could already do the pod. Like I did on the last one. Oh, what a great deal. Really team friendly. Wow. His cap hit's only this in year one. Can't believe Howie did that. Man, he's really that's what it's going to be. So I was actually talking to someone about this yesterday. Where it's an interesting topic and it's obviously a massive deal for the franchise, but in some way there's just no drama. With Carson, there was drama because he was hurt and all this stuff. With Jalen, he's healthy. He's young. He's great. You got to pay him. Look, there's a discussion to be had about paying a quarterback in general, but that's not exclusive to Jalen, right? So ultimately, they're going to pay him, and it's going to be a ton of money. So yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward.
All right. Did you hear anything about how quickly it could get done? We're assuming, I would assume it's done before free agency.
I would think it's definitely done before free agency. My guess is, within the next week. I don't think I don't get the sense that they're trying to rush to get it done before Burrows and all these people. I think they'll just
they're going to do what they're going to do and not worry.
I don't get that sense, but I do think it'll be done quickly because as crazy as it is, free agency's in 2 weeks.
That's what I mean. Yeah, it's got to be soon. March 13th is the legal tampering day. That's 13 days from the legal tampering day.
And I think they'll want to sign him before then, but I also think
they'll know what's it's allocated. They're not going to go in and be like, oh, I guess we could just sign guys.
They're going to be like, oh my God, his cap hits 25 million. But they're aware of what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I agree. All right. You got anything else? Anything else you heard out there? Any other nuggets before we get out of here? Everyone check Elliott out on the radio at 11:30.
We talked about Kelsey. I think Kelsey's out here in Indy for what it's worth.
Well, I assumed because Howie said he was going on with them.
That, although what's interesting is he could have definitely done that. Like, again, we're doing a pod.
Of course they could have. Yeah.
But I think it's a little interesting he's out here. I
think the fact that Howie's doing his pod, like just the fact that he's even just doing it is a pretty good sign that he's.
What are you going to do a whole hour and not talk about it?
And at the end, be like, guess what? Not coming back. Thanks, Howie, for everything. Good luck.
I think him coming out. I don't know. I
would be. I'm at the point, and again,
I would be surprised if he retired.
I would be shocked. Like I would really I've got myself to the point. Maybe it's wrong that I would be shocked. So
I agree. But a part of that is he's going to get paid. So another part of this whole
you're right.
They just have. That's it. My main takeaway from being out here is they have a lot of money on the offense, which means there's not going to be as much in the defense, which means guys are going to leave and they're going to maybe sign one, maybe two, if like Bradbury's market doesn't come out the way, like people expect. But ultimately, I think they have one big move in them on defense, and the rest, and this is going to be on Howie and the coaching and the scouting staff, is finding guys that are cheap that can play. And then it's going to be on Sean Desai to make those players better. But on defense, it's going to be a tough struggle. And look, I love this. You don't have to tell me. It's going to be on the offense. Offense wins. It's going to be on Jalen. Like, you remember when Carson signed his deal, things changed. Who got released, by the way. But I feel bad.
There's nothing else to say on Carson. I see people in the chat being like, thoughts on Carson. You know our thoughts. I
feel bad for him.
I don't feel bad for him at all. The guy made over $100 million playing football, I have zero sympathy for Carson Wentz. Like,
would you take him for
free?
And
he's responsible for a lot of it. Like, the injuries hurt his career, and it sucks. But that's football. He luckily got paid, even with the injuries, and made a lot of money. There are a lot of players who get injured and never get paid. Like, I don't know. Like, he never did any. Like, he's kind of a
That's fair.
I don't think he's like a bad human, but he wasn't a good Eagle. He didn't do any. Like, he didn't work on his game. He didn't take accountability for anything. He ultimately forced his way out of town the moment things went bad. Like, yeah, I have no sympathy for Carson.
Would you take him?
You? Get on out. No. I not just for the Eagles. No team in the NFL would I sign Carson Wentz to be a backup quarterback. Not one. I can't think of someone to be worse. Like, you think he's going to be there mentoring the young quarterback? Or
you'd have to feel confident that he is.
No. I would not. Like, I actually would. I would no joke when I say this. I'd rather have like an Ian Book as my backup quarterback than Carson.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of logic in that. I think he probably will get. He should go now. I agree. He should retire. Like, he should definitely retire. But I do think that if he signs somewhere, he's not going to sign with like Atlanta or Chicago. Would be my guess. My guess is he's going to go somewhere behind like Mahomes or whoever, where it's like you are not the starter, but he'll go there for a year. This way, if he goes in, he's in a good situation. So. Yeah, we'll see. Eagles need a backup quarterback too, by the way.
They do. All right. Final thoughts, because you have a radio hit. Are you on with Joe and Hugh coming up?
I am on with Joe and Hugh.
Everyone, when you're done with this, switch to the Odyssey app, switch to WIP.
I'll be on it.
I can get a little extra Elliott.
Yeah. Well, and also it'll be in the feed, so you can hear it.
Look at that. Even better. All right. Final thoughts.
I feel like I have any. Look, I was up till 4 a.m. Oh, yeah. Okay. Like, dude, I'm so done with IPAs. Like, I'm officially a late.
Welcome aboard.
I am a light beer drinker.
Welcome.
I'm in.
I can't do it. I can't. And I haven't.
Yeah.
I'm like guaranteed to feel bad.
I 100% agree. I'm too old for IPAs. It's done. It is what it is. It's my first
bed. I go to bed at 7:00 at night. All right, you want to talk about old? All right. I fell asleep at like 6:55.
You called me yesterday, and it was like 6:15, and you were like, "I'm about to go to bed," but really, I was like, "Well, first of all, I'm jealous." But the other thing is, dude, actually, I don't have anything else.
Okay, you sure?
I have some airplane thoughts, but they're not that interesting.
We'll save them for tomorrow. You got final thoughts tomorrow too. Quick final thought, and then a Zoe quote, or a question she asked. I was thinking watching. I can't remember what movie I was watching. I was watching Den of Thieves. Perfectly nice action movie, entertaining. It'd be so cool to be a stunt driver. Like to do, all I want to do is that
Very
move
risky,
where
though.
you pull but if you're great at it, and it's movies, you're fine. You pull
people
when
do
you're
get hurt
going
doing
like
it.
150 and you pull the emergency brake and turn at the same time and do the skid around the corner turn and then accelerate.
Yeah.
I just want to do that once in my life. And when I do that once in my life, I think I'd be awesome at it. I think it'd be the coolest thing you've ever done. I'd probably flip the car a few times trying to learn it.
I was going to say,
I'd be great.
I'm sure you can do anything you put your mind to, but as someone that's driven with you, I don't know about if going 150 miles an hour and making sudden turns is going to be your strong suit. I think Emily would probably agree with me on this one.
Well, but Emily doesn't like when I do it, but I got some moves.
I'm just, yeah. You do drive fast, I guess.
Yeah. All right. And then an important question, if anyone knows the answer, let Zoe know. Because Zoe asked me this the other night, and it was a great question, and I just had to bring it to the pod. So, Elliot, from Zoe.
Okay.
Do mermaids know Spanish?
I mean, I would guess the Spanish one, though.
He just looks at me out of nowhere, and it's like, do mermaids know Spanish? Sure.
Well, but you could have countered, do mermaids know English?
Great point by you, Elliot. See, it's this, that you're right. This is like through our own prism. I mean, we look at everything.
Here's what you should have said to Zoe. Do they know sign language?
Oh, buddy.
That's
it. We're done. All right. Check us out tomorrow. Parks Picks Pod. We'll be together again. Thank God. Keep leaving me, going away.
Dude, trust me, I'm very ready to get home.
I'll bet you are. All right. You got to be on the radio. Everyone in the chat. All my heart. I love you guys with all
34 people watching. Like,
phenomenal.
A good showing from the real ones.
Sean and Jeremy and Dank and Mo. And I saw our buddy Stokes in here and Tommy. Drew, I mentioned before. Like,
Gary.
Just Tommy. Awesome stuff.
Jeremy.
All you.
Lots of good people.
Super awesome. We had a blast interacting and all that stuff. And we'll do it again tomorrow, around 10-ish tomorrow. So tune in for that too. Parks Picks Pod. Until then, he's Adam James.
Boom. Oh, yeah, I have to hit it. Okay.
I can hit it. I hit it. I got it. I got it. Boom. Got it.